MarTech Nordic. I'm Fabian Gehring and I'm so excited to be your final keynote for today. Now picture this. You're back in the office and there's a delivery guy coming right to your desk. You don't recall ordering anything, you're wondering, but you still sign it. So the delivery guy tells you to wait a second. While he leaves, you're thinking to yourself, what did I order? You still have no clue. Then he returns with a box. A box as tall as you. It has, I will transform your business written on it. What is that supposed to mean? So he drops that box right at your desk and leaves. You're curious what's inside. You still have no idea what's inside, but you go and you open that box. And there's a robot inside.
What am I supposed to do with this thing?
Now, put yourself in that situation. What would you do and how would you react? This is how many marketers feel about artificial intelligence. It came out of nowhere, it just appeared at your business or at your desk, and know what to do with it. And on top of that, it's supposed to be the next big disruption for your business. But are marketers using it already? So according to a study conducted by Adobe and eConsultancy last year, 36% of customer experience leaders, as well as 33% of large organizations, are already using AI and machine learning solutions. What concerns me though is that only 17% of the mainstream companies are currently using AI and machine learning solutions, and the grand majority, 57% of the mainstream companies, they don't even plan on using or investing into AI solutions. So why is it that the majority of customer experience leaders as well as larger organizations are already using or planning on using artificial intelligence, whereas the majority of mainstream companies are not? To answer this question, I have a special guest appearance later in this keynote. Now back to the robot in the box, aka artificial intelligence. Wouldn't it be nice if that robot at least came with a quick start guide? Well, today I'm giving you this quick start guide and maybe even a little small change of perception. Now, in order to understand how marketers can use AI in their day-to-day business, we have to understand where it's coming from, what it actually is, and what the current state of AI in marketing is. Let me take you on a quick journey.
A road diverges in the desert. Lexus. The road you're on, John Anderton, is the one less traveled. Make sure you are
Good evening, John. You can move the old-fashioned John Anderton. Provides gourmet cuisine. John Anderton, you could use a Guinness right about now. Stressed out, John Anderton.
escape from it all, Harrison. Get away, John Anderton. Forget your troubles.
Hello, Mr. Yakamoto. Welcome back to the Gap. How those assorted tank tops work out for you?
Isn't it impressive that Minority Report was released almost 20 years ago? And now, many of those AI use cases you've just seen are already in use. But AI dates all the way back to 1956 when John McCarthy first defined artificial intelligence. Machine learning, however, is a subset of AI and generally entails teaching a machine how to do a particular thing, like recognizing a number or an image, by feeding it a bunch of data and then directing it to make predictions on new data. We are now even a step further with deep learning. Just like neurons in your brain, these are networks of interconnected layers of algorithms that feed data into each other. AI and machine learning applications in marketing are primarily used for predictions like trend predictions in market research, segmentations, for example, in cluster analysis, and recommendations based on measurement data, or even as recommendation systems on a customer level. So the most dominant push at this moment is in natural language processing applications. Think chatbot, voice, or content creation. Also image recognition and even emotion or sentiment in AI, meaning the ability to recognize emotions, are now at advanced stages. And lastly, machine learning algorithms play a big part in data analytics. Keep in mind, data is the fuel that powers AI across all use cases. it is now more important than ever to collect first-party data in order to maximize the effectiveness of machine learning algorithms, given that we are heading towards a cookieless future. Now, a quick recap how AI can add value to your business. AI can be used to deliver more personalized marketing content and experiences. AI helps with data and data analytics to make better decisions quicker, faster. And lastly, it improves effectiveness and efficiency in your marketing workflows. But in any case, AI can improve your customer experience, and that should be front and center. Now remember, I promised you one guest appearance, and I'm super excited to have one of the authors of The Technology Fallacy joining us today. So give me 1 second, let me ring him in. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for taking the time today to talk a few minutes about what you've discovered while working in your latest book. But first, would you mind introducing yourself for the viewers?
Absolutely. So we're delighted to be with you, Fabian. My name is Jonathan Copulsky. I am a senior lecturer at Northwestern. And then in addition to that, I serve as the executive director for a research center that we have at Medill. And before I joined Medill, about 5 years ago, I was a senior partner at Deloitte, the global professional services company.
Today, we're talking about your book, The Technology Fallacy. This book is titled How People Are the Real Key to Digital Transformation. So does that mean it's not about the technology per se? Can you tell us more about how you came to this conclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. So the subtitle, as you mentioned, is about how people are the real key to digital transformation. And the premise of the book, based on the research, is that just because digital technologies are causing all the disruption that lots of companies are experiencing, doesn't necessarily mean that the technologies per se will be the solutions to those problems. And let me just give you a little story. The story is about a factory, and there's a factory manager, and she has a very expensive piece of equipment. The piece of equipment breaks down. So they call a repair person to come. And the repair person comes, takes out a tool, turns a bolt on that piece of expensive equipment, and says, I'm done. Oh, and by the way, here's my bill for $5,000. And the factory manager says to the repair person, you've got to be crazy. How can you possibly charge $5,000? I need to get a detailed itemized bill because otherwise I'll never be able to pay you. So the repair person takes out a pad of paper and writes down $100 for turning the bolt, $4,900 for knowing which bolt to turn. So the story is, it's about the expertise and the insights and the experience that people bring, which allows us to take advantage of the various technologies that increasingly become part and parcel of how we operate.
So what exactly is it that those digital mature organizations are doing different? How are they operating?
We discovered that there were 4 things that were pretty important to the companies that are successful in doing that. Number 1 is that they tend to be very good at understanding, identifying, and assimilating new innovations at a very high rate. So they look, they're scanning, they're trying to see what competition's doing, they're trying to do what peer organizations are doing, but they're also looking at examples of what other organizations that may be in completely different sectors are doing as well. And we describe this as digital absorption, the ability to absorb new technologies into the organization. The second thing that we talked about is what we call digital affordances. And affordance is an ability to take advantage of a particular technology. And many technologies have capabilities that we may not realize until after we have a chance to play with that particular technology. The third thing is digital agility. And we talk a lot about agile marketing and agile development and other types of agility. But when we talk specifically about digital agility, it's about companies that have embedded in their culture a testing culture. And what we mean by that is the ability to test fast, the ability to learn fast, and then the ability to scale fast. So I grew up in the world of direct marketing in which testing was part of our DNA. And what we really learned from the companies that were digitally mature was that they do a tremendous job, not just of testing, but also learning from the test and then scaling when they have successful tests. But when the tests are not successful, they also do a great job of sharing the results of even the unsuccessful tests so that the organization can learn from what hasn't worked. And then the final thing is digital attraction, that they understand ways to bring on employees who are interested in working in the company and can bring new sets of skills and expertise and have the right mindset. And a growth mindset comes from a term by Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. And what she says in her book is a growth mindset says, I can learn new things, I can try out new things, I can increase my capabilities over time, as opposed to a fixed mindset, where in fact, with a fixed mindset, we said, what I know now is what I'm ever going to know. Because I'm interested in people who don't have this fixed mindset, the ones who have the growth mindset, who can learn and expand and grow, because the technologies that we're dealing with right now in 2020 are very different than the technologies that I was dealing in the workplace when I started in 1980. And my suspicion is that the technologies that we're going to see in 2025, 2030, 2040 will be very different than the ones we have today. So the only way that we're going to have people understand, master, work with those technologies is so they can learn.
So digital transformation is an ongoing thing.
It is. We are now working on a new book, which will be published in 2021, and it's called The Transformation Myth. And the reason why we use that term is we've come to the conclusion, particularly with the current COVID-19 pandemic, that any notion of we start a transformation, we finish transformation is illusory. Because all of a sudden we have realized, because of COVID-19, we have to do a whole bunch of things we never did before. And so the myth is once and done. The reality is it's always happening. And all of a sudden we've learned in the last 9 months that we need to do things like contactless delivery. We need to do things like distance learning. We need to do things like Zoom calls. And one of my favorite quotes is from Condoleezza Rice. And she said, what at one time seemed impossible, in retrospect seems inevitable. I heard a variation of this last week from a friend of mine who's a senior executive at Salesforce. And his version of the same comment was, what at one time seemed visionary has now become mandatory. So this notion that we can sit still, make all these changes, now we're done, and we go, okay, put that aside, now let's go back to life as normal. We believe is a myth, hence the book. So keep your eyes open for the book in 2021.
Awesome. Got this noted down. But my last question here is, so how does an organization actually become a digital organization? What are the steps necessary, and how could a pilot for an organization look like?
So I get asked this question a number of times. People will say, how do we get started? And the answer is you just start. You got to start somewhere. And what we discovered is the difference between companies that are digitally maturing and companies that are less digitally mature is that they start pilots and they don't do much with them. So this notion that we have a learning pilot and we do the pilot, we learn something from the pilot, we then say, how can we take it to the next stage? And then we figure out how we can scale it up. I'm a big believer in the agile methodologies, but you combine agile methodologies. So let's do these pilots in a fixed amount of time. Let's learn something from them and then figure out where we go. So purposeful learning pilots, to me, are the best way to go.
Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and the viewers of the MarTech Nordic conference.
Great to be with you, Fabian.
What an amazing amount of valuable information. So let me recap this real quick. The difference that Jonathan and his co-authors found between digital maturing companies and the companies just getting there is something they bundled into the digital DNA, which is digital absorption, digital affordance, digital agility, and digital attraction. These 4 elements are the elements that separate the leaders, the digital maturing leaders, compared to the mainstream. So the next point is transformation is an ongoing thing. It's not something that you do once and then you check mark it off and then you move on to the next one. No, there's always something happening in technology. There's always some new stuff coming up. But you don't have to jump on the next newest shiny thing. You have to think about, okay, does it fit into my culture, into my strategy, and is my organization ready? Meaning from a technical perspective, do we have all the technical pieces in place? So now we're getting to the actual quick start guide, a pilot program. How could you run such a pilot program? So first you have to set clear goals. What do you want to achieve with your pilot? Do you want to see if that AI application, that machine learning application is actually fitting into your technology environment? How is it perceived with the employees? Could you use this and even scale it up? So what's the purpose of that pilot? Identify the goal, write it down, make it a SMART goal. The next piece is think about how long that pilot should run. It doesn't make sense to run a pilot over 5 years because in 5 years there might be even new technology out there. So identify your goals and the timeline. Then the next piece is get your team together. Think about who are the digital mature people in your organization. Who can you reach out to? Who would be interested in it? Because all this intrinsic motivation, these are the people you're looking for with that growth mindset. These are the people who really want to jump on board, test out the application. They will take it to the next level just because they are so invested in it, because for them it's so rewarding just working on some cutting edge technology. So you assemble your team and then you run the pilot. The team knows what it's doing, or they figure it out along the way, but at least you started. You have to just go with it and learn along the way. So now once you learn along the way, you share your results, you share what's working, what's not working. And at the pilot's end, you collect everything you've learned, you collect all the data points, and then you share it out. Did it work? Why did it work? Didn't it work? Why didn't it work? But regardless, you have so much more valuable lessons learned just by running that pilot, and that might even set you up for the next piece. It might even set you up for the next AI application, which you can now take and integrate and play around with. But even just going through that pilot and going through that whole process, it will develop your team, they will grow with all their hands-on experience, and at the end of the day, it will also mature your business digitally, because that knowledge level of your employees is increasing just by working in that pilot. So to close this keynote, let's go one more time back to that robot in the box. Would you use it now? Would you pilot it? What would you do? Let me tell you one last thing. This is not a robot. This is a cobot, a collaborative robot. A collaborative robot is used in manufacturing, and it's supposed to help and collaborate with humans. So if you're coming home from a long day at work and you felt like you worked like a machine, now this is exactly what AI and machine learning will help you. It will take the repetitiveness, all that things that can be automated, so your mind is free for more strategy, for more creativity, for all the things robots cannot do right now. We'll see how it's going to look like in a couple of years. Maybe it's different there, but at least you're preparing yourself for what's coming now, because again, digital transformation is not a one and done. It's ongoing, and that's why you have to embrace it, run with it, because otherwise you're gonna play catch up.
Wait wait for me! Wait! Typical.
And with that, thank you so much, MarTech Nordic. Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I hope you took something away, and till the next time.